Well, folks, unfortunately, it looks like the moment we have all been kind of waiting for is finally here. And don't get me wrong, this isn't something that we all wanted to happen, but it is something that a lot of us knew was going to happen eventually. And now, reportedly, Iran is set to attack Israel any moment now. Hell, by the time you're watching this video, maybe they are already in the middle of attacking Israel. I honestly thought that this would have come sooner. I thought that this moment would have happened months ago. But from what our government is saying, from what the White House is saying, they believe an attack from Iran is coming within the next 24 to 48 hours. AKA, it's either going to happen today or tomorrow. Now, of course, Iran has been pulling off little attacks via their proxies and terror cells and other, countries and areas of the Middle East. But this looks like it's going to be a direct attack from Iran. Now, the USA has promised that if Iran directly attacks Israel, that the USA is directly going to attack Iran. So as we sit here and we patiently wait for this attack to happen, which is kind of weird, right? It's weird living in 2024 where they literally tell you what's going to happen on the internet. And when I say they, I literally mean these countries and these militaries, these militias. They have their own social media accounts and they literally post, hey, we're about to go attack here, and then it happens. And America is no different. We literally lay out our battle plans on CNN, Fox News, and on Twitter and Facebook and tell you what we're about to do before we do it. So at some point in time over the next couple of days, Iran is going to attack Israel from what's being said. And if America is keeping true to their promises, that means that America will be at war with Iran within the next couple of days. Everyone's focusing on the attack on Israel. I'm worried about America's involvement because I don't live in Israel. I don't live in Iran. I honestly don't want America getting involved in all of these issues, but I know that America is involved. And a lot of these issues wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for America's tinkering in all of these other countries. But at the end of the day, I'm America first. I'm going to root for the home team. But it's really sad knowing that we are literally hours away from possibly diving headfirst into another major war in the Middle East. And like I've said, we all kind of thought this was going to happen. I thought it was going to happen months ago. I'm surprised that we've made it this long. But I think they're going to drag this whole entire situation out. I've tried my best not to pick sides when it comes to this conflict between Israel and the Palestinians and Hamas and you name it. But at the end of the day, I feel like this is something that could have kind of been nipped in the bud by now. But they're going to drag this out. And right now, I feel comfortable predicting that the height of this conflict will purposely happen near and around our election. It really feels like, for a lack of better words, like there's a lot of foreplay going on in this conflict. If you're going to do what you're going to do, go ahead and do it and get it over with, right? We don't need to drag this thing out for years. Go ahead and try to accomplish whatever your goals are and get out of there. But no, this is going to drag and drag and drag and drag and drag. And like I said, just like with everything else that's going on in America and in the world right now, it's like this powder keg that is being filled with gunpowder, and it's going to blow. It's going to explode right around November. I can almost guarantee you that. But yeah, as of right now, all eyes are on Israel because it's believed that this is going to be a major attack. And it's not the attack that I'm even focused on anymore. It's what happens afterwards. Because if the USA is keeping with their promises, then this is going to get pretty crazy. It's going to get hectic really fast. And dealing with Iran is a totally different ball game than when we went into Iraq and when we went into Afghanistan. Iran is a totally different story. But before I go any further, let's go ahead and roll this news clip really quickly, and then I'll be right back with more thoughts.
Pay attention to this. We're back with a Fox News alert out of the Middle East. Israel saying it's ready to respond after the United States warns an attack from Iran is imminent and could potentially come within the next 24 hours.
Yeah, the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem just issuing a major security alert for embassy staff and other U.S. citizens in the country. An Iranian source also tells the Wall Street Journal that attack plans are being discussed, but no final decision has been made. Joey Jones is a Fox News contributor, of course, and he joins us now. Joey, good morning to you. The situation is tense, to say the least. What goes through your mind when you hear all of this?
Yeah, I think they're tactical and then they're strategic. I think the tactical sense here is that Israel conducted a strike that took out more military leaders for Iran. I think the life expectancy of an Iranian military leader is probably as short today as it's ever been when you couple this with what President Trump was able to do. But then as an American, I zoom out and say, what does this mean for us? I mean, as a country, we can't fight a war on three fronts, meaning Ukraine, Israel, or the Middle East, and then potentially the Pacific or even here at home, which is our greatest concern. And so, you know, obviously as Americans and someone who's fought a war, we don't want there to be a larger war in the Middle East, but Israel has to make a calculation. The one truth that I do know coming out of the Israel-Hamas war is that an entire generation of Palestinians have been bred into a lifelong fight to destroy Israel. And I know that makes it sound like it's Israel's fault. It's not. But any war, any collateral damage in war creates a psychological enemy. So they may physically impede or even destroy Hamas. That doesn't mean they take the idea of destroying Israel away from the Palestinian people. And one of the better ways to control that is to take their physical support from Iran away. So I think this is tactical. I think it's looking forward. I think it's trying to get to the, as Kamala Harris would say, the root of the problem, which is Iran. I just hope that Israel has a plan and has thought this out, and that somehow that we stop escalation in the Middle East from happening, because we can't afford as a country in the United States to support a war that gets larger than what it already is in Israel.
Okay, so when it comes to that calculation that you mentioned, the world and clearly the Biden administration are giving Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a lot of notes, making this very, very difficult for him to figure out what he should do. But he doesn't seem very confused. He seems resolute as to what Israel will do if met with an attack. Listen.
We continue our nonstop efforts to return our hostages, but we are also preparing for scenarios of challenges from other arenas. We establish a simple principle. Whoever hurts us, we hurt him.
Yeah, so Joey, there is zero equivocation there. What is the response from Israel and from the United States? I know you said it's confusing, it's complicated, but what is the response from those two powers if Iran attacks in the next 24, 48, 72 hours?
I think at this point, Todd, it's easier to predict a response from Israel than the United States. I think Israel, if they have the weapons and munitions and physical support, will absolutely retaliate if any attack is conducted on the homeland. I think one of the biggest concerns now is, does Iran attack an asset like an embassy in an Arab nation, or do they attack somewhere in Israel specific, or do they attack somewhere Israeli troops in Gaza, which kind of keeps it in the gray area? Do they do it through Hezbollah, or do they do it with Iranian military forces or missiles itself? I think Israel's response will be very definitive. I think they will respond militarily. I think the United States is the wild card, and to an extent I understand, simply because if Israel can't fight this war without United States support, the President of the United States does get a say, either through diplomacy or through the supply of munitions. However, we have a president that wavers. We have a president that says one thing and does another, and we have a president whose body of work says he'll do anything to not win a war, and that's a problem. That's a big problem. It's one that I hope we remedy in November, but it's one that really plagues us across the board, from our own military readiness to what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Israel, and God forbid what could happen in the Pacific.
Yeah, and that is why the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem just issued that major security alert for embassy staff and other U.S. citizens in the country to try and get out, because we just don't know what's going to happen. And if Iran strikes directly and, God forbid, kills an American citizen, we could be in an entirely new place in this war that we don't want to be in.
Now, as I was saying earlier, if and when this attack does happen, what I'm focused on is not necessarily the response from Israel, it's the response from the USA. Is the USA going to respond by, oh yeah, we're going to help Israel by giving them a bunch of money and a bunch of weapons, which we're already doing? Or are we going to see boots on the ground? Are we going to see airstrikes? What type of retaliation are we going to see? Not necessarily from Israel, but from the USA directly. Because we've made the promise that the US will directly get involved and basically go to war with Iran, even though we might not declare war, because the USA loves getting into military conflicts without declaring war. You know, war will be had. But all jokes aside, America has already been put in a tough position, because multiple areas in the Middle East have come out today and they've said they're not going to allow their areas, their regions, their countries, their bases to be used for the USA to stage an attack against Israel. You see, the U.S. military is strategically placed in certain places all around the world. Now, we have, I believe it was Kuwait and Qatar. They've come out and said that you can't use our air bases or our areas to stage these attacks. You see, we have air bases and stuff in these various countries throughout the Middle East. And if we were to launch an attack against Iran, you know, we're going to be launching from these air bases that are staged throughout the Middle East. That's how we would carry out our attacks. Of course, we have, you know, aircraft carriers in the ocean and stuff as well. But before this battle has even begun, the USA has already been crippled, because these countries are all out here saying, hey, even countries with U.S. military bases in them, you know, they're like, hey, you're not going to use these bases to launch your fighter jets or your drones or your missiles or whatever you're going to do against Iran. You're not using our bases. These attacks won't be coming from our areas, our regions, our countries. So now, before this conflict has even began, you know, it's like the U.S. has had its legs chopped out from underneath them. So we're going to have to strategically plan on how we're going to go about this, because we've been basically handicapped at this point. We've been handicapped. So seeing that all of these countries are coming together and saying they're taking a stand like, hey, the U.S. can't stage your attacks from here, I'm wondering how likely some of these countries and areas are to be more sympathetic towards Iran and take Iran's side in this situation. Because right now, to me, it looks like Israel versus the rest of the Middle East. It doesn't look like too many people are on Israel's side besides the U.S. And even the U.S., a lot of people over here are not backing this war. And I don't back any wars. I don't want to be involved in any of these conflicts. I want to live a peaceful, prosperous life. And I don't want to have to worry about young men and women from America or any country going and getting bombed for this nonsense. But at the end of the day, what's going to happen is what's going to happen. It's out of my control. It's out of your control. We're going to have to sit here and watch as, you know, the stage is being set for another major military conflict. But with that being said, let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. While you're down there, if you would like to donate to the channel, you can donate via Cash App or Super Thanks, or for free, you could help the channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing the video. But with that being said, I'll talk to you all very soon in the next one.